continuing in the appendix, if you will, the Miluim, as it's called in Hebrew, in the Torah Sheleimah from Rabbi Mendel Kasher to Parshas Mishpatim, and where he speaks over here all about dinim for Bnei Noach. So, in the original, we're on page Reish Yud Ches, which would be 218, bottom of the left-hand column, titled Moshe Shama Latzas Yisrael, that Moshe heard, accepted the advice of his father-in-law, Jethro. The Nemar B'Sipur Hahu, it's told in that story, that episode in the Torah, Shemoshe Rabbeinu Olav HaShalom, that our teacher Moshe, of blessed memory, Asa Zeho Inyan HaGadol, he did this great thing. We're talking about the establishment of the judicial court system. Batzas Yisroi, according to the advice of Yisroi, She'omar Loi, Yisroi said to him, to Moses, Im es hadavar hazeh taseh, this is a quote from the Chumash, if you do this, v'tzivcha Elokim, and Hashem will command you to do it. In other words, I'm just suggesting it. Obviously, I know you're going to check it with the authority. If, in fact, Hashem commands you to follow my advice, v'yacholta amoid, then you will be able to stand. V'gam, and also, kol ha'am hazeh, this entire nation, the Jewish people, al mekoymoi yavoy v'shalom, will be in peace. Everything will be fine. Everything will be in order. And that's the end of the quote from the verse. And now we continue to paraphrase. V'shama loy b'ritzayin Hashem. And Moshe did listen and accept Yisro's advice according to the will of Hashem. V'asa hadavar hazeh al piv. And he did this, in fact, according to the mouth, the words of Yisro. He followed his advice, the Nechtav Basefer, and it was written in the good book known as the Bible. Okay, so that's what it is. That's what it says. The Torah tells us how we got to this point of having a judicial system of, I guess it would be called a hierarchy within the Jewish system of having this level of officers, these judges, and then the higher level of judges, and all the way till you get to the ultimate. V'zeh he'ara toiva, and this is, what I'm going to tell you, a good note. Ki loy lechinam nechteva parsha achas b'Torah al Yisroi. It isn't for naught that one entire section in the Torah was written about Yisroi. He merited to have a section in the written Torah about him. And also to show how dear it is, so it takes precedence to be written. And this is impossible for no reason. You can't say that Hashem said, well, just write this story part in the Chumash. Obviously, there's reasons. In other words, what he's suggesting over here is, as he's about to go on and explain, if Hashem could have just said, here is the system, the way it's written, where you have judges, and this is how you set it up, and there's a court of so many judges, and then there's a higher court, and this is the system. Why do we, for all future generations, need to know from the written Torah, from the Chumash, why do we need to know that it came about in such a way, and Yisro suggested it, and Moshe asked Hashem, and Hashem commanded him to follow Yisro's advice? Well, it can't be for just nothing, just a storytelling thing. Azkir mehem shloisha. So I'm going to mention 3 of the reasons. One, shehoidianu basipur hahu, that he is informing us in that story, ki yefshar la'adam, that it is impossible for a person, lahasig shleimus, to achieve perfection. B'derech shelo yitztarich latzas acher, in a way without needing someone else's counsel, someone else's advice. He's suggesting, why is it that the Torah tells us this whole story of Yisro? To let us know that everybody needs advice from another person. For behold, our teacher Moshe, who was perfect amongst men, talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, he was the most perfect person of anybody preceding him or following him, ever. This is Moshe Rabbeinu. Nitzrach latzas Yisro. He needed Yisro's advice. It wasn't like, well, if he's so great, couldn't he figure it out himself? We are taught over here that no one is an exception to this, so to say, rule that everybody needs other people's advice. So the Torah is letting us know, Hashem wants it documented, that Moshe needed and received good advice from his father-in-law Yisro. Hasheni, the second reason why the Torah is telling it to us, Shera'ui, that it's proper, it's fit, L'kabel ha'emes v'yeshu mikol adam, to accept the truth and that which is just from every person. Don't judge based on who the advice is coming from. Anyone who gives you the truth, who gives you a proper piece of advice, accept it. Gam ki yehish hamagid, even if the person who's telling it to you, even if he is be'emes, truly, pachus, lesser, mehamekabel, from the recipient of this advice. Gam ki me'amacher, even if he's from a different nation. He's not even Jewish. In other words, it's not just, well, your perception is that the other person is less than you. Who says you're right? Or you feel, or you think, or you're haughty, or you're putting him down. No. Even if the absolute truth is that, in fact, the other person who's giving you the advice is of a lesser stature than you. Even if he's from a different nation. And it is fit or proper for that person who's accepting, who's receiving these words, to say it in the name of the person who he got it from. Don't just accept his advice and then follow it, but it's proper to even quote it by the source. And if he writes it in his name, let him write it. And it is inappropriate to begin analyzing or to begin scrutinizing the originator, the one who actually gave the advice. Rak hamaymer bilvad, just the statement itself. Take the advice, analyze the advice, scrutinize the advice, but don't bother scrutinizing who it came from. That's the lesson over here. So even though it was Yisro, and Yisro was at some point, he was a priest, and Yisro were taught in the oral Torah, actually tried out every single avodah zarah of the time, and all that. So one might think, Moshe's not going to take any advice from this newcomer. Come on, especially as his father-in-law. So he's saying, no, doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference who he is. Doesn't make a difference where he's coming from. Listen to what he has to say. If it's wrong, if it's hypocrisy, fine. So then, reject it. But if there's truth to it, just because it came from him, accept it. And that's what the Torah is teaching us. Hashlishi. And the third and the final reason that he is suggesting over here. The commandments of the Torah were drawn down into wisdom, into intellect, kedei lahamid haguf ulekayim hamin, in order to properly have the body, meaning the existence of the physical being, and to keep the race. That's how I'm going to translate it. To keep the being. As it is explained in the statement that is said in the Torah. This is towards the in Chumash Devarim, towards the end. Kiloi davar reik hu mikem. Okay, this is a quote of the verse. The verse says, "For it is not empty from you, ki hi chayechem." For it, referring to the Torah, is your very life. So that's what the verse says. It isn't something empty from you, but it's your very life. Ve'amru, and another verse that it says, Ki hi chochmaschem uvinaschem leinei ha'amim. For it, the Torah, is your wisdom and understanding for the eyes of the nations. So the Torah, for the Jews, that is your intelligence for the nations. V'chein, and likewise, ba'heina, came here, alamidas haguf, about firmly establishing the body. V'yacholta amoid, in those words that Yisro said, that we quoted earlier, when he says to him, if Hashem will agree and you do what I tell you now, then you'll be able to stand. You will endure. Val kiyum hamin, and also in the continued existence of the race or whatever, meaning those are in the words v'gam kol ha'amazel makoyme yavi v'shalom, and also all of these people, the Jewish nation, will be in order. In other words, if you want these two things to happen, because those are both hinted to in the words of Yisro. So he's suggesting now, why does the Torah tell us the story of Yisro, giving the advice, is because the words, the choice of the words that Yisro used is very important to us. So we have a lesson here that if you want to have the stature of the body should exist, and if you want that the Jewish people should be able to continue and endure, so for that you need to have the this judicial system, these dinim. Ad kan, up to here, is the end of the statement that he's making. Verei, and now he tells us a reference, Torah Sheleimah, that's his own book. He says, look up in Torah Sheleimah, Yisroi, Perek Yudches. In the previous parsha, this is on Mishpatim, so look up in Yisroi, chapter 18, Kuf Lamed Beis, which would probably be the page 132. All right. Let us continue. Okay, this was all a quote. When it says At Kan, up to here, that means this is the end of the words of the quote. Now, who were we quoting? Was it a Tosefta? Boy, see, we were in the middle of some. Oh, boy. Yes, okay. If I'm not mistaken, this was a quote that he started in the first column on the previous page 218. In the first column, halfway down, he calls it Echad min HaKadmonim, one of the earlier codifiers. Rabbeinu Yaakov Antuli, who was the son-in-law of the Even Tivon, in a book of his called Melamed HaTalmidim. And first he quoted him in the Parsha of Noach, and then he says, but in greater detail in Parshas Mishpatim, and I think that's where this whole thing started, where the whole quote up until here. So it was basically the past 2 columns were a quote. So this is not Rabbi Kasher's own thoughts. This is not his innovation. So we just said now about the 3 reasons that he suggests. It's this much, much earlier source of Rabbeinu Yaakov Antuli. And now Rabbi Kasher begins his explanation, or his commentary. Mivur bidvarav. So what's explained from his words, Yesod Chadash, a new fundamental idea. We have a new foundation. And that is, Shekol Mine Takonos, that all sorts of institutions, Sherabi Miskimu Alehem, that the many have agreed upon. In other words, I don't know if the word is democracy, but that is not forced upon, not a what's the political word? When one person makes decisions for all.
An absolute.
Not a dictatorship, right? Not in a way of a dictatorship, but if it's an institution, a rule, a law, something that many people agreed upon. Yesh lem din de'iraisa mitzad dinim. So then that now has a biblical level of authority, and it is considered dinim. So a bunch of people, human beings, right, which don't necessarily have a godly mind, but a bunch of human beings came along and they said, here's a rule we're making. And in that time, and in that land, the people, the majority of the people or whatever, instituted that. Whatever their system of lawmaking is, but the lawmakers on behalf of the many, or with the vote of the many, or however it goes, the representation of the many, whatever it may be, each country, each time, when they make a law, it comes out that law is biblically, legally binding. It became a Torah law, which is a pretty radical statement if you think about it.
Mm-hmm. It would be like the Philistines.
What about them?
Well, when no, not the Philistines, the Shechem,
okay.
because they had to talk to the entire town to convince them. So when they were doing things, they were making laws.
Interesting.
In that manner.
Interesting. Not necessarily. It's just that they wanted the people to be on board. You're suggesting that, wait a second, he's the head of the place. This is Shem himself. All he has to do is tell the people that this is how it's going to be. We're going to, accept these people and intermarry with them.
So with any wicked nation, you could say that, well, that's Torah law. Excuse me, it's Torah
right.
law.
So then the question becomes, what happens if their laws are
against the Shem?
Are bad laws, right? And what happens if they're right? So at this point, what I would say very simply is, so long as their laws don't go against any of the other 6, then you're okay. But once they infringe on the 6, no, they can't make a law that you're allowed to steal and you're allowed to kill. No, that you can't do. But they can get into details and say, well, what's called stealing? And as long as it's still clear that there's a law against stealing, whatever. Or they can't say, well, we are allowed to eat limb off of a live animal. No, that's not. You don't have a choice about that. You can make laws and say that you can't eat any meat at all, and that would be binding for those people then. And
We're not really talking about laws that contradict the 6 here. It's
right.
really
No, because this is dinim,
and
he's saying, and
traffic stop sign or something.
right. And dinim over here, we're saying we're not going along with the opinion that it is to uphold the other 6. It's just
the civil stuff.
Yeah. And even after the giving of the Torah, after the revelation at Sinai, Nishar Geder Zeh, so this categorization remains shel dinim, of laws, of civil laws, shetzivsa haTorah kedem matan Torah, that the Torah has commanded prior to the giving of the Torah. Shehem, that they are dinim nimusiyim, laws of proper conduct, of manners, proper manners. Shebnei adam maskimim, that people agree upon, midai tam umirtzoinam alehem, from their consent, with their will. They willingly accept them. That's what we're talking about. And then he concludes this part in saying, Bezehu, and this is inyan, the concept of dina de malchusa dina. The law of the land is law. That's what we're talking about.
I might want to underline that one, Bob.
Dina de malchusa dina.
That's the inyan of it.
Yep, that's what we're talking about. The law of the land. What do you mean? The law of the land is the law of land. Well, no, duh. He says no. The law of the land is the Torah law. That's what they say. Really, the law of the land is Torah. That's right. What does it say in the Torah? It doesn't. That's the whole point. Since this group of people in this time, in this place, have made this the law, that law is Torah binding.
That's the inyan of dinim.
That's right.
Interesting.
That's right.
That's really cool.
Umikan raya. And then continues Rabbi Kasher, and he says, and from here is a proof, lemasha kosuv, for that which is written, b'shailas v'tshuvas chasam sofer, in the series of the responsa, of the halachic responsa of the chasam sofer, Yeredeya siman shin yudalid, in the section of Yeredeya siman 3:14, and we quote the chasam sofer. Dina de Malchusa, and the law of the land, the oisan inyanim, in those matters, the kaimalan, Dina de Malchusa Dina, that we do establish, we do say that the law of the land is the law. Min ha-Torah hu bli safek, it is certainly biblical. In other words, he's clarifying, the Chassam Sofer saying that it doesn't mean that, well, rabbinically you have to follow the laws of the land. He says, no. Whenever we do say that rule, it means that it's a biblical obligation. V'tziyein, and where does the Chassam Sofer reference to something earlier before him? L'shailas v'tshuvas haRamah, to the halachic responsa of the Ramah, Siman Yud Hanal, the above mentioned Siman Yud that we quoted earlier, where we were discussing Rabbi Yechanan's opinion that Bnei Noach are commanded to make up laws and all that. The Ramah, just to remind everyone, is Rabbi Moshe Isserlish, who he is part of the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch itself is written by the Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Karo, and right after that came the Ramah, who's the Ashkenazic ruler, Ashkenazic Jewry, and he has his glosses, and oftentimes disagrees or amends things that the Shulchan Aruch says for the how it applies to Ashkenazim. So he's right there in the body of the text, in the prints, in the different script, in what's called a Rashi script. And he introduces his words usually with the word Haggah, which means note. V'chein kasuv ba'avnei miluim. And likewise, it is written in the Sefer called Avnei Miluim, Siman Chavches, Sif Katan Beis, chapter 28, sub part 2. The Dina de Malchusa de Oiraisa v'loi takonos chachamim. That this rule that the Gemara says that the law of the land is law, so the Avnei Miluim as well states very clearly that that is the Oiraisa from the Torah. It is biblical, and it's not an institution of the rabbis. It's not rabbinic. V'yesh shetohu ala Chassam Sofer. And then there are those that are questioning, they're bewildered with this Chassam Sofer's approach, that Dina de Malchusa Dina is biblical. Ayin Shalos V'Tshuvas Binyan Tzion HaChadoshes Siman Aleph. And then he tells us, take a look at this particular sefer where he seems to question the Chassam Sofer. It's called Shalos V'Tshuvas of the Binyan Tzion. Umidivrei melamed, umidvar, umidivrei melamed hatalmidim, And from the words of this Rabbeinu Yaakov Antuli that we quoted in his sefer called Melamadat Talmidim, from his words, Mivur Lehedyakim comes out clear like the Chasam Sefer. So yes, I'm admitting, I'm letting you know that there are those who are very bewildered by the Chasam Sefer statement, but I'm letting you know that this whole long 2 columns that we just quoted, that fits with the Chasam Sefer.
Okay. So that,
V'nira, and it appears, Shagam HaRamah Sefer came, that the Ramah holds the same way. So I don't want you to reject the Chasam Sefer so quickly. It may sound radical, but this very early source says it clearly, and the Ramah, who also preceded the Chasam Sefer, which the Chasam Sefer brings down as a reference or as a support for him, also says so.
So it was before the Chasam Sefer wrote his book, so he would have already known it.
He quotes the Ramah. The Chasam Sefer quotes the Ramah.
So he just already knows that.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
interesting. So he's probably assuming we might have already known it.
Who, the Chasam Sefer?
Yeah, he's probably like...
Well, it's in his tshuva, whoever he's writing that to, he's making this point because it is a radical point. The only thing is, he's not saying, I'm not making it up. You know, he uses the Ramah. So that's what Rabbi Kasher is telling us over here, that it's not just, 1 or 2 people who are saying this. This is very authoritative. Ulinyanenu. But as far as our topic is concerned, as far as what we're discussing over here, Mivu'ar, it is explained, comes out understood, Shesoiver, that he holds, Shehadinin shebnei Noach nischayvu, that those dinim, those laws, those civil laws that Bnei Noach are obligated to keep, Hemadinim nimusiyim, they are laws of proper conduct, of manners. And like the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan in Sanhedrin, Lepirish HaRamah, according to the interpretation of the Ramah. This is all going back to what we said in the first column of the previous page. And then he sends us to take a look again back to the original Sefer Torah Sheleimah, his book back here. This is again the whole thing is an appendix. So he says, take a look what I wrote in the book itself, on Ois, letter 12. And he quotes himself. V'im toimar, and if you're going to ask, you're going to say, Kishem shenasan li Yisrael dinin, kach nasan umas olam v'chulu. Just as Hashem gave laws, civil laws, to the Jewish people, so too, similarly, he gave the nations of the world a set of laws. No, he didn't do that to every nation. There aren't 71 different sets of laws, one for the Jews and one for every nation. No. And there aren't even 2, one for the Jews and one for the 70 nations. That's not so. He didn't do that. Umuchach, and it's proven, mizeh, from this, logically, that the laws of Bnei Noach are commanded, because we all agree, we all know that one of the 7 mitzvahs of Bnei Noach is dinim. Well, then what are the dinim if they're not a separate set of laws? All of the dinim that Bnei Noach are obligated in, and you can't say, well, they're the Jewish laws. No, that's the Jewish laws. So then what are they? Nimusim. They are just logical, proper manners that they need to come up with and to implement, and then to establish his law.
Is there an assumption that there's a common sense that all 70 nations should be following a certain logic?
What we said before, and they don't have to all agree upon it. And what's law in France is not binding in Italy. So normally you'd think about that, okay, well that just means legally. But what does that have to do with Torah law? Now we're saying, no, we're talking about divinely, godly, biblically. So biblically, if during this period of time, a citizen of Italy lives in Italy, he has to follow these rules. And then if he moves, or the other fellow, his third cousin, who lives in France, he's got a different set of biblical, godly, God-given, so to say, laws. That's what we're saying.
But would we say that there's underneath that there's some sort of a moral standard that's a standard?
Nimusim, they're all moral. They're all logic.
Okay, so there's a certain assumptions that exist, and then as it applies to the nation's circumstances.
Because the goal of every civilization is that it should be civilized and not chaos. How that expresses itself, so different countries have different, things. So again, there's a lot of things which are going to be not within their domain to decide upon. Mm-hmm. And without getting off subject, or I don't even want to use the word controversial because that's my whole point. It's not controversial. Let's say abortion, just for one example. They can't touch that. Abortion is illegal. Why? Because it's one of the 7. It's considered by the Torah to be murder. So that's it. So they can't debate that. They can't decide, well, in our country or in our time or this state, that state. No, that's not optional. Okay. How about same-gender marriage? That's not an option because Torah has something to say about that. So it's not allowed. So they can't say, well, no. We're talking about, anything else that's doesn't infringe upon the 6, doesn't involve the 6.
You can waste tap water here in the city of Chicago, but maybe if you live in the desert, like a desert country, it's illegal to...
Yeah. Anything. I mean, obviously, once you get into a lot of details, then you can start questioning this and that. Is it, whatever, to burn the flag of your country. So what's the problem with that? And is that really for, whatever it is? If it's the law, it's the law. If it doesn't go against the other 6, then you have to abide by it in your country. And therefore, if it's, whatever it is, let's say taking, the intake of certain substance in a state like Colorado within the United States is legal. Okay, so unless you're going to prove to me that it goes against one of the other 6, so then it's legal. And in a different state, that's illegal. So then it's illegal. So we're saying, unless you want to say that's not nimusim, that's not a matter of upholding the civilization, but why not? I mean, obviously they have a reason for why they say it's permitted, and they have a reason for why they say it's forbidden. Mm-hmm. And arguably, they both make sense. Mm-hmm. The question is, well, which makes more sense? Like in any debate. So, whatever. Maybe that's a poor example, but that's the idea. That's the idea. Whatever the law is the Torah law. That's the point he's making. Ubebiur, you have it? The line starts b'nei, in the middle of the line. It's about 5 lines from above the end of the paragraph. Much further down, I think. Ubebiur. Right there.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Ubebir ois hey, and in the explanation that I have on my letter 5, again quoting himself, Hevesi divrei mahari. I brought the words of a great rabbi as follows. Lefisheroi velu mitzvahs hasechel mechayvoisem chulu. Because most of these mitzvahs are logical mitzvahs, which normal human intellect mandates and obligates, l'ishuv ha'olam, and therefore civilization, umin hagoy nitztavu, and for running and conducting a civilized, moral, proper world. That's why we were given these commandments.
Which commandments?
All of them. The 6, and therefore makes sense that dinim follows along the same thing. That it's all about making ethical, moral laws. Hayisi oimer, I would have said, Moshe midas atzmei sideroisam, that Moshe on his own organized them. He's the one who decided these things. It wasn't that he was told by Hashem how to do it. And he explained all the nuances and all the details according to the order of the world, what the world needs. Came along the pasuk and hints to us that no, that is a mistake. They were all God-given at Sinai. In other words, we're talking about the mishpatim for the Jews. All those mishpatim which are the logical commandments, the civil laws. So they make a lot of sense. So one would make the mistake and say they're made up by Moshe. Hashem told him, I want you to make laws so that the world can be civilized. Your nation will live in a civilized manner, so go make laws. Brilliant Moshe came up with a whole set of laws. Nope, that's not how it was. Every detail and every nuance was given to Moshe from Sinai. Okay. So we can also learn from the language, the usage of the words, and remember the Rambam is super precise, and that's why it's so unfortunate when you have the censorship who played around with his words, but we know that the Maimonides, the Rambam, is exact and precise to the letter. So in chapter 10, halacha 9, in the laws of inheritance, and we quote, and again, don't get caught up by the first word, it's probably a censorship, so, Ho'akum yerish es aviv dvar Torah. The non-Jew inherits his father by Torah law. In other words, when it comes to inheritance for Jews, then it's super clear what the, so to say, the down chain of inheritance. When one dies, who gets his estate? Is it his sons? Is it his daughters? Do they divide it evenly? Is it as their firstborn? Does his spouse? Does his father? Does his uncle? I mean, who's next of kin as far as the inheritance? Torah law is extremely clear about that. Okay. What about a non-Jew? Says the Rambam in the laws of inheritance, which is written, of course, Mishnah Torah, it's written for the Jews. Tells us the Rambam that a non-Jew who dies, his son, his non-Jewish son, inherits his estate. Just like by the Jews.
So that would not be something that each nation would come up with their own?
1 second. The Rambam continues. Aval, however, she'ar Yerushay sehen, all the rest of their inheritance laws, manichin oisoy lefi min hagam, we leave it according to their custom. In other words, there's one important general rule when it comes to inheritance, and that the Rambam says they shouldn't tamper with. For some reason, that's the law, that a son inherits his father. But then all the other details, leave it according to their custom.
What would be an example of another detail?
What happens if there is no son? So does it go to his brother, or does it go to this relative, that relative, or does it go to his spouse? Maybe his wife should get it. All those, he says, whatever the country decides. If one place says, well, of course, his spouse gets it before his brother, another says, no, his brother is his own blood, and his wife is just someone who he's related to because he married. Whatever. Says that, leave up to them. And whatever they decide, that's what you got to follow. By the Jewish law, it's a whole, it branches off. In other words, this is the one who inherits, or these are the ones that inherit. But if in their absence, okay, then it goes, and in their absence, and it just keeps going. And it goes by relatives, but we have to determine legally who's the closest relative as far as inheritance is concerned. So for a Jew, the father's side is closer relatives than the mother's side. That's just the way it is. So he's saying, okay, so the initial step one is has to be the same for the non-Jews, but after that, they don't have to follow this whole, chart that the Jews have to follow. Just leave it according to whatever their custom is, according to whatever their manners is. The Kesef Mishnah, and the Kesef Mishnah, which is one of the primary commentaries on the Rambam, the Kesef Mishnah, he actually happens to be the author of the Shulchan Aruch. It's the Rias of Karo. But anyway, parenthetically. Kesef Mishnah, he says as follows. Because we don't find that there should be an order of inheritance of the Jewish people. I was explaining what the Rambam says. Why don't we follow? If this is the rule, the way the Torah said, that means that's the perfect. So why not enforce it for all the 70 nations of the world? What's the big deal? He says no, because we don't find anywhere, in the Torah where it speaks about that. it's clearly speaking to the Jews. So there's no need to enforce that. In other words, just like all the other laws, they don't have to follow Mishpatim, Parshas Mishpatim, which has, the majority of all the laws. So the case is that the nations of the world are not obligated to follow that. That's for the Jews. So same thing with inheritance. Let's take a quick look in the Rambam. Can you give me the one that says Mishpatim? Right there. So that would be Mishpatim. You see it?
Fifth from the left.
Yeah. Thank you. So it's chapter 10, halacha 9. 10:9. Yeah, because that's right. Mishpatim. That's where it is. Okay, 10:9. Little problem. There is no 10:9. So maybe a typo here. 1 second. Hilchos Nachos 10:9. Okay, I'll find it then.
I wonder what he could be getting confused with. A lot of times that happens. They get confused with certain topics that are written.
No, or the typo, the one typing it, certain letters.
Yeah.
Halacha tes. Perik Yud, halacha tes. Okay.
Maybe it's 9:10.
I don't think so. That wouldn't. Well, let's see. 9, 10. No, there's
to
no
see
9,
which
10.
which keys are next to which keys on the typewriter.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. The keys are typewriter. Also, sometimes I get confused. Like I'll say Hilchot Avodah Zarah 10:2, but sometimes instead I'll say 10. I'll say like 10:10, thinking because I'm thinking of Hilchot Malachim, Hilchot Malachim, But the thing is, it's still the same topic. They're still dealing with types of non-Jews there, so it's like. Looking at some of my ancestors, and that's what. Yeah, thank you. And one of the ways to get information, like a lot of information from your ancestors, is to look at their will, their probate records. And
It tells you who's who.
Yeah,
gives you a lot of information.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Because like the census records back then, they didn't say a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
They put your name and like if you owned slaves or not. And that's basically what it was back then. And then, I found some really cool stuff. The education level too of those people, like my ancestors that came over, highly educated, and then over time you notice like their education levels just decrease, and they lived on farms and they just didn't have access to schooling or something. I don't know. Like the accounting of their estate was like crazy. They have a record of who owed them money and who they owed money to, and then the executive of the will was supposed to pay certain people and things like that.
6-9.
I'm sorry?
6-9. Oh. Look inside. Look inside. See where it says V'chein yesh, the first line of the paragraph?
Are we still,
Yeah, see it? V'chein?
yeah.
V'chein yesh lilmoid. And so we can learn Milashon Rambam, from the language of the Rambam. Now, what does it say?
Hilchot.
No, before that. Pei.
Pei Yud.
That stands for Parak Yud,
Yeah.
chapter 10.
Chapter 10.
Mei Hilchos Nachalois, from the laws of inheritance. Hei Tes stands for Halacha 9, Halacha Tes. Okay? Now, which letters are very similar? So, first of all, a Hei and a Ches. But that wouldn't be a mistake because it wouldn't make, you can't say Ches Tes, that's nothing. It's obviously Hei Tes, Halacha Tes. So, what are the letters? Go back to Pei Yud. What letter is similar?
Oh, Pei, he got confused between the, no.
Go back. Pei Yud. Perek Yud. What letter is similar to that?
Would the letter similar to Pei or to Yud?
Well, it has to be a Pei. There would be no mistake because that's Perek.
Okay, because that's Perek, okay. Yud, Vav.
That's it. So it should be a Vav. That's all. Pencil,
That's a
please.
common mistake.
Yeah, it should be a Vav. Okay.
Do you want me to correct this on yours, or do you want to do it?
Thank you. Okay, so it's chapter 6, and it says as follows. And this one says Hagoy instead of Vakum,
Yeah, that's the, who's that, Cook edition, yeah.
which is also not very accurate, but they made a lot of, they fixed a lot of things. Okay. A non-Jew, a goy, inherits his father biblically, but the rest of their inheritances we leave according to their custom. And then you bring down over here in the footnote, the source for that is from a statement made in the Gemara in Tractate Kiddushin 17. It says,
That's funny.
Actually, there are two opinions how we learn it out, but everybody agrees it's a biblical. We derive it from a verse in the Chumash in the Bible. Yes, there's a dispute between Rav and Rabbi Yechanan, but they both agree that it's biblical. Okay, and it's only father to son. The rest doesn't apply to the non-Jews. Don't try to impose.
Where are we learning father to son from, though? I mean, that's.
You want to go into that?
Well,
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to have to.
Okay, so according to Rabbi Yechanan, well, first Rava, who's on 17b, and then Rabbi Yechanan, who's on 18a. Rava says that there's the verse in Leviticus 25:50, chapter 25, verse 50, that says. Laws of Jewish slaves that are owned by non-Jews. Okay. This is one of the places where it says Ger V'Soyshav. Verse 47. V'chisasig yad Ger V'Soyshav imach. Umach achicha imoy. If a resident, non-Jewish alien, in other words, a Ger Toyshav, even though it says you're Ger V'Soyshav, okay, he's a ger and a resident. So if a ger toishav gains wealth by being associated with you, and your fellow Jew becomes needy by being associated with him, and his non-Jewish customs. And the Jew is sold to a ger toshav, to a resident non-Jewish alien who lives among you, or to the maintenance of idols. In other words, v'nim kar leger toshav oy le'eker mishpachas ger,
How's that possible?
or to an idol worshiper.
Or to an idol worshiper.
Right. In other words, if a Jew is sold either to a ger toshav or to a real oived avodah zarah.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, as soon as he is sold, he should be redeemed. You know, it's the Jew, fellow Jew, come and redeem him. In other words, we don't want the Jew being owned not only by an idolater, but not even by a ger toshav.
Or just you'd own, period, right?
Well, a Jew can own a Jew.
A Jew. Oh, yeah.
But we're talking about a Jew being owned by a non-Jew, so even if the guy's a ger toshav, we don't want that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we read.
That's probably where Yovel comes in.
One of his fellow Jews should redeem him. Or his cousin should redeem him. Or another close relative from his family should redeem him. Or if his own hand will acquire wealth, he should redeem himself. Now comes verse 50. He should calculate with his purchaser the period from the year when he was sold to him until the Jubilee year, when he would have been freed. You know, if it would be a Jew, owned by a Jew, he'd be freed. The purchase price should then be divided by the number of years to arrive at a yearly cost, as if he were a hired worker on a daily basis. So this is telling us how to calculate how much he should pay to free himself.
To pay who there?
To pay the non-Jew that owns him.
See, that's my theory about why the Yovel is important. But I never found anything that's explicit.
Okay, so from that law of calculating it as such, Rava learns out that when it says, and calculate the chishev with the purchaser, and that, he says, is clearly telling us, and not with the heir of the purchaser. Meaning, if the non-Jewish, the idolater or the ger toshav, died while owning this Jew, this Jewish slave immediately goes free. He doesn't have to pay the heir. Why not? The guy, you were owned by a non-Jew, and now he died, so just like his fields and his house and everything goes to his son, you too.
Yeah, right.
So Rava says, no, the son of a goy inherits all other possessions of his father, but not, in other words, the fact that the Torah needs to teach us that the Jew is not required to pay anyone other than the actual guy who owns him, not even the heir, is to show us that everything else does go to the son.
Well, that it goes to someone. Why would we think the son?
Are you talking about just the words, the way the wording is?
Because it says v'chishavim koinehu, so we're saying that's
because it's an addition.
That's what's the English word? That is exclusive. Im koinehu, with the one who acquired him, purchased him.
Okay.
Okay. So wait 1 second. So Bob asked a good question. Give me a second. When all else fails, look at the source. No, what he's learning over here is that in general there is a concept by non-Jews of inheritance. That's what he's learning.
Yeah.
But you're right. It doesn't imply that it's his son, but that the concept exists. Because otherwise, who says there's a whole thing? Who says there's such a thing as inheritance? He says no, because it says over here that the Jew is to pay the one who purchased him, implying, but don't pay who? His next door neighbor? He says no, don't pay the heir. If your owner, that your master died, you don't have to pay anybody else, implying that you would think you should. Okay, so that is how we know that the general concept exists. But how do we know that what the Rambam says, that it's the son, and then the rest is up to them to decide?
So does it mean that the Jew can just run away, or like without any?
At that point,
legal
yeah,
repercussions?
he's freed. Yeah, he doesn't have to pay. Well, no, see, Rava says that biblically, a guy inherits his father. And then he quotes this verse, Klal Isla Yershim. I guess that it goes as follows. Since the Torah is telling us over here that the concept of inheritance applies by everybody, even by this non-Jew, by the idolater or by the Ger Toshav. Okay, so what does that mean, that there is inheritance? Who inherits? So he says, well, let's look at the Jewish law for inheritance. But just do step one. You don't have to go through all the details. After that, leave it up to them. That's the logic. In other words, there's a concept of inheritance. Okay, so who? Well, don't leave it up to them totally. You mean, step one, they should at least do what we do. The son is the heir of the father. After that,
By definition of inheritance.
I guess something like that. That the son is the heir. Like who else would be the heir?
Right.
You would say the spouse. You say, well, why not? If a certain country says, we say the spouse is the next, So, no. Since the Torah says it's the son, it's obvious this is the son. But after that, let them do as they, decide to make the law. That's Rava's. Rabbi Yochanan disagrees, and he says that a goy inherits his father biblically because the verse says, Ki Yerusha leis v'nosati asar seir. We learn it out because in Devarim, Deuteronomy, chapter 2, verse 9, Hashem said to me, to Moshe, not to oppress Moav, and don't start up with a war with them. Do not besiege Moav, and do not entice them to war, because I will not give you any of their land as an inheritance, since I have given the land of Moav, also known as Ar, in this pasuk it calls it Ar, Yerusha, to the children of Lot as an inheritance.
Because Moses is a child of Lot, right?
Second.
So God gave.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Hold on. Sorry. It's actually, then it continues verse. Okay, so we start off. Sorry, okay, verse 5 earlier says like this. Instruct the people, saying, Hashem tells Moshe, you are about to pass by the border of your brothers, the children of Esav, who live in Seir. and they will be afraid of you. Be very careful not to provoke them, because I will not give you any of their land, not even the right of passage without their permission, since I have given Mount Seir to Esav as an inheritance. So we see that there's an inheritance by them. So then...
You're speaking to the brothers?
No, this is Hashem telling Moshe.
Yeah, but they're speaking about the brothers.
What brothers?
Your brothers.
Whose brothers?
In Edom.
Esav, his descendants, right?
Esav means the Jews' brothers.
Yeah.
Well, going back, I gave this land as an inheritance to the descendants of Esav. So then the Gemara challenges and says, that's a proof that non-Jews have inheritance? Maybe a Jew that's a, what do you call it in English? A mumar, a meshumad.
I'm not sure about the father.
No, that he converts out, that he...
like an apostate or something like that.
Yeah. So maybe that's different. Esav was born Jewish. He's a twin of Yaakov. If Yaakov is Jewish, he's Jewish. So what he don't bring me a proof from that verse. So then the Gemara says, okay. But rather, then we go on to verse 9, the one that we said before. And that is, Loit wasn't Jewish on any account. And then Hashem says over here, I gave the children of Loit an inheritance. So you see there's a concept of inheritance by non-Jews.
See, that to me, that's a proof. Like, that's the other one I didn't understand. One from Vayikra.
Well, Lot is also the...
Relative of Avraham?
Yeah, it's not a nation proper. These are nations that are spun off from the patriarchs.
No, Lot isn't.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Lot is a nephew of Avraham. That doesn't make him a descendant.
No, because there's a concept because Lot was saved by Abraham.
That doesn't make you related. That may make you have to show gratitude. We're talking about the word in the verse is Yerusha, inheritance. Inheritance doesn't mean gratitude or being nice.
Well, no, but I mean the relationship between Moab and Israel.
Yeah.
Moab is not like you got the 70 nations from the time of Babel.
Okay.
Moab is not one of those.
70 nations are from why Bavel? Way back to...
Yeah.
No, way back to the...
Well, the Tower of Babylon. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, you're right. That's what you meant. Okay.
And Lot is like one of the spin-offs from the patriarch time.
So?
So it's not a nation proper.
Okay, so for the descendants of Lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So in other words, there's a concept of there's a man, and then he had children, who they had children.
Sure.
So these people got this piece of land as an inheritance.
Okay.
So we see that Hashem is telling us that the Goyim have rules of inheritance.
Okay.
So that's enough to prove that Yerusha, inheritance, applies to the non-Jewish world as well. Okay. And then the Gemara discusses why does Rava disagree with Rabbi Yechanan, and why does Rabbi Yechanan disagree with Rava's proof.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so okay, then it says, why doesn't Rabbi Yechanan just agree with Rava's proof that because of the koinehu, with the Eved, the Jewish slave, so it says because the verse doesn't say that he has to pay his purchaser and not the heirs. You're just implying that.
Right.
That's not clear enough.
Right.
Then it's Rabbi Yechanan. Why does he bring something which seems to be a bit more ambiguous when you have
exactly,
this?
Right.
So the Gemara answers, actually, it's sort of what Bob's saying. Sort of. The Gemara answers because maybe out of Abraham's respect, it's different. In other words, Moav is, because Lot is a nephew of Avraham, so maybe that's a whole different story. So maybe that's an exception. Those Goyim do have laws of inheritance because of, like you're saying, they're a spin-off of Avraham or something. So each one of them has their reason why they hold, which is the proper way to learn it out from. But one thing that both agree on is that there is the concept of laws of inheritance. And somehow from that, the Rambam says, therefore, father to son, But after that, whatever rules they want to make. If there is no son, then they could decide how that goes. But otherwise, it goes father to son, because the verse says livnei. Oh, that's it. The verse says livnei loit. First it said livnei Esa, le'esa. No, it says ki livnei loit, to the children of Lot, the sons of Lot. Okay, so there we see that inheritance goes to the son. Okay. Be that as it may, let us proceed. Next paragraph.
Mipnei? Is that where we are?
No, Veloy.
Veloy. Oh, yeah.
Veloy came by Meiri, Kiddushin Yud Zayin. However, this is not the way it is in the Meiri on this Gemara in Kiddushin 17b.
Leave it to the Meiri.
What does he say? He disagrees with the Rambam.
Kedushim 70 what?
17b, same thing.
17b.
Yeah, what we just saw. And says the Meiri, Hagoy v'cholu, the guy, etc., quoting that, Haregu bichlal Yerusha shel Torah, he is included in the Torah inheritance. The laws of inheritance apply to Goyim. The Yerush es Aviv, and he inherits his father. The Ushar Meirishav Atkan. And all the rest of the heirs as well. He doesn't say after that, let them make up their own laws. No, he says the rest also is biblical, which I guess the understanding of the Meiri would be that they have to follow the Torah system. As far as Yerusha is concerned, there are no sons. Who do you go to next? What do you mean? Who do the Jews go to next?
Oh, interesting. So
Right. As opposed to what the Rambam says, that it's just father to son, and after that, let them make the laws.
Interesting.
Ayin Shem Behara. The Gittin, let's take a look over there in the footnote, and Gittin 40a. Umevur lahedya. But what is explained clearly, Shitas HaRambam, the approach of the Rambam, his explanation, his opinion, Bedin Yerusha shel Bnei Noach, when it comes to the laws of inheritance of non-Jews, of Bnei Noach, Shu bichlal dinim shel Bnei Noach, that's included in this seventh commandment of the Bnei Noach called dinim. Dinim means laws. Well, laws include laws of inheritance. Rak, it's just Yerushas Av hu dvar Torah, that the father, his possessions go to the son. That's biblical. Aval shar dina Yerushas, but all the rest of the laws of inheritance, mekevan shein lo nominat Torah dina Yerushas bishvil bnei Noach, since we don't have biblically laws of inheritance after that point for bnei Noach. Hadinin shalahem. So what do you mean? But they have laws. There are no sons. Then what do you do? So their laws mivusasim are based rak solely al nimusehen uminhagehen, on their manners, al pias kamasam, based on their agreements, whatever the lawmakers, whatever the people of the land decided. V'hainu dina de malchusa. In other words, here it is again, the law of the land. So now when you go to a court of law because there's an argument and a dispute between two uncles, he's got an uncle from his father's side and an uncle from his mother's side, and because there were no children, so they're arguing over the estate, and they go to court, and the judge says, "Well, this is what the law book says. We have a law that you go by the and whatever." That becomes Torah law. Not that it really initially is, but because that's what they decided, so therefore, Torah says you have to follow it. That's dinim. That whatever they made up, that's how it has to be.
So because the Rambam sees in the verse that it applies to son, the father to son, for the nations, therefore, that is there for the nations, but nothing else is talked about for the nations, and therefore...
Whatever they decide, which is made up by the nations, is Dina de Malchusa, falls into the category of dinim, and therefore it is biblically binding, even though the Bible doesn't say it.
What I'm saying is that there's the specific is mentioned in the Torah for the nations that the son inherits from the father.
Correct, but
there's
after
nothing,
that,
but there's nothing else in the Torah for the nations,
and therefore
it's open to whatever the courts decide.
And whatever the court decides falls into the category of dinim, and it's binding. And based on these laws, the nations of the world are commanded to conduct themselves. And by doing so in this, they are actually fulfilling this commandment of the seventh of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. They are keeping the commandment of dinim, as we explained above. And since the vast majority of these things, we don't have a ruling in the Torah for B'nai Noach. That's the truth.
That's the point.
Right. So it says, therefore, therefore we must say like the Rambam says. There is no option. Because, see, this is clarifying what, like till now.
Was this still
No. That was, he just wanted, that was just the first 2 lines of it. No. That when it comes to this, the law is according to their customs. And see further on page 267. Where there he speaks about nachalois. Okay, well, let's not get to that yet. That's where it talks about inheritance. In other words, it comes like this. Me, a Jew, walking down the street, or I have an acquaintance through business or whatever, I have a neighbor, and there's a non-Jew. And I feel the mandate because I learned what the Rambam says, and realistically speaking, because the Rabbi Mendel Kasher told me so and made a campaign and says, nowadays, you have an obligation and a responsibility towards the non-Jewish world. Go teach them the Sheva Mitzvahs. Okay. So I say, sir, do you know about the Sheva Mitzvahs? And then I rattle off 7 laws. No killing, no blasphemy, no this, no. Set up a court of law. Yes. Oh, thanks. Okay. That's very nice. Or I give him a card. I give him it has a list of 7, and that's it. Now, how is he supposed to conduct himself? Or now he comes over to me as a rabbi and he says, what about in this case? What do I do here? I said, no, just 7 rules. Just don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery. Okay, that's like really general. What do we do about details? So he's saying, therefore, that's the point. The Torah does not specify details when it comes to dinim. So the details are to be made up by the non-Jewish world, by the people, logically, and they're supposed to make up what's good for the people, what's good for civilization, and that is the fulfillment of dinim. So now it makes sense. So that law of dinim includes literally thousands of details. You walk into any, law library or into any judge's chamber or whatever it may be, and all that whole wall full of all those thick law books, that, whatever does not contradict the 6 laws, that is Torah binding dinim. Now, even though Torah is eternal, and Torah doesn't change, and these laws by definition are different in different times and places, that's fine, because the Torah says that for B'nai Noach, dinim means follow what the time and the location issues as a law.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's a very interesting approach.
It reminds me of in the House of Congress or whatever you want to call it, I don't know. But they have the Rambam. I don't know if you knew this, but they have Rambam. They have a
in Washington?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The Rambam and Moses and Moshe.
A picture of each?
It's like, so when the president or when whoever's addressing Congress is speaking to the rest of Congress, they're directly up ahead. I didn't know if you knew that. No. But that's what it reminds me of.
Because just now I was in the Capitol. My son gave us a tour in Springfield. Very impressive, So we went to where the Senate over there is and whatever.
And well, I don't want to. Maybe I could talk after that.
Let's see. So, let's see. The next part is sort of a new thing, but it's a continuation of this. I think we should continue. Well, but the part after that is really after that. This would be a good place to stop, but I think let's do one more piece. Okay? So we are on the left-hand column on the top, and page 219. The title is Noach Nitztavim Mipi Agvura. That Noach himself, Noach, he was commanded by the mouth of the Lord. Hashem himself spoke to him. That's the title. So after we've just explained this whole novel approach to the mitzvah of dinim for Bnei Noach, with this whole fundamental approach.
Noach not know Hashem by Hashem? Why did they say the word?
Oh, no, that's just a language that the Chachamim use oftentimes. I mean, they don't just use it haphazardly. Obviously, everything is calculated, but it's not just Noach. A lot of times we say about Moshe, so it means the Almighty, actually. Gevurah means the strong one.
Oh, okay.
V'yesh laha'ir al shita zu, and says Rabbi Kasher that we can now make a notation on this approach, this philosophy, namely shadinin shnitztavu b'nei noyach, that all these laws that b'nei noyach were commanded, lodun bidvarim shebein adam lachaveiroi, to judge between man and fellow man, all these civil laws, hemadinim nimusiyim. So we said they're all things of manners, of logical, ethical, proper conduct. That's what we said, basically. So we can ask on that, or we can bring a notation onto this. Mehadim mevur, from that which is explained, b'mishnas Rabbi Eliezer, Parsha Shishis Amud 120. Okay, is a certain Tanoic statement by the Tana Rabbi Eliezer, and he gives us the reference, that says as follows. Hefresh, the difference, the distinction, between Chasidei Yisrael leChasidei Umayis Ha'olam, between the pious of Israel, that's such a terminology. A Jew is a Jew is a Jew, but then there's Chasidei Yisrael. So between the pious of Israel and the pious of the nations of the world. What's the difference? Chasidei Yisrael, the pious of the Jews, Einon Nikroin Chasidim, are not referred to as Chasidim ad sheyasu kol haTorah. But they do the entire Torah. You want to be called a Chassid, a Jewish Chassid? Well, you got to do all 613. Until then, you don't earn that title. Aval Chasidei u'moisa oilam. However, the pious of the nations of the world, since they do fulfill the 7 commandments upon which Noach, the Bnei Noach, were commanded, Hein, they're keeping those 7, them, V'chol dikdu kehen, and all of their nuances, all the details of the 7, Hein nikroim chasidim, they're called chasidim. In other words, for a Jew to be called a chassid, he's got to keep 613. For a non-Jew to be called a chassid, he's got to keep 7 with all their details. What's wrong with that?
Well, yeah, but I mean, you get the Torah. If they're doing the Torah that applies to them, the Jew is doing whatever applies to him, the 400 or whatever commandments that a regular Jew does.
Okay.
And the Noahide or the pious among the nations are doing the 7 that apply to them. So they're doing the
okay.
mitzvahs
But
that
so
apply
far,
to them.
all he's saying is that the list is much shorter. In other words, it's a quantitative difference. Mm-hmm. Fine. Okay.
Where's he getting that? Does he say where he gets that from?
This is Rabbi Eliezer speaking, the Tana. And see, what's the source for that?
There's a Tana?
This is a Tana.
Really?
Yeah, this is Rabbi Eliezer speaking. Mishnas Rabbi Eliezer.
Really?
And he continues. And he says, Bamed Dvarim Amurim, Beis Daled Aleph. Bamed Dvarim Amurim, when does this apply that we give him the title Chasidei U'Moisa'olam if they keep all 7 with their details? Kishe Oisin Oisan, when they do those mitzvahs, V'oimrim, and they say, Mikoyach shetziva oisonu avinu noyach mipi hagvura onu oisin. We are keeping these commandments because our father Noach has commanded us in the name of Hashem. That's why we're doing it.
That's different than the Rambam.
Right. V'im oisin kain, and if they do that, harein yarshu ha'olam haba Yisrael, then they inherit the world to come, just like the Jews. They have a share in the world to come because they're keeping it, because it's God given through Noach. Even though they're not keeping Shabbos and Jewish festivals. They weren't commanded to keep them.
The Tanakh saying this?
Yeah. So therefore, that's Chasidim Mesoilim. Keeping the 7 because Noach commanded us in the name of Hashem. Avol, however, Imosu Sheva Mitzvahs, if they did 7 mitzvahs, okay. V'omru, and they said, Mi pi ploini shamanu, we heard it from so-and-so. Dr. Seuss told us to do it. Mr. Magoo told us to do it. Oy midas atzman, or they're doing it on their own knowledge. Shekachadas machras, they say, logically. Why do I keep these 7? Because it makes sense. Because it makes sense. Logically. If that's their approach, Oy, or another option, a third option, Sheshitfu Shem Avodah Zarah, Shituf. They're including, not only is it God given, but they say also Avodah Zarah. There's also some, other gods. Then, if this non-Jew, if this Ben Noach, im also kol ha'Torah kula, if they kept the whole 613, everything, they only get rewarded in this world. He's not taking away the reward in this world, but Olam Haba, nope, nothing. They ain't getting anything in the world to come. They're not Chasidim Mesoilam. So you have 2 people, let's put these 2 people here. You have 2 people, 2 Bnei Noach, 2 descendants of Noach. Neither are Jewish. And one guy, and forget about the fact that Chayv Misa for the Shabbos, for learning Torah, let's put that aside. You got 2 guys. One guy is keeping Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach religiously, meaning because he says Hashem commanded Noach. Okay. The other guy is keeping 613 like a good Jew. The difference is, this guy says, I'm keeping all these mitzvahs because they're God given to Noach. The other guy says something other than that. Either he says that, whatever these options were, so the guy who's doing all 613, he said he'll get rewarded in this world. He's not Chasidim Mesoilim, he's not from the pious of the nations. He has nothing of Olam Haba, the world to come. The other fellow, he inherits the world to come like a Jew.
Where is this at?
Who says this?
Yeah.
Rabbi Eliezer. Mishnas Rabbi Eliezer.
Mishnas.
Rabbi Eliezer.
Yeah, I gotta get that. I don't understand where he's, just kind of as an aside, but
Hey, why is that so different than the Rambam?
a couple things. One, it's not because Noach commanded.
Okay, right.
That's pre-Matan Torah.
Okay.
It has to be after.
All right.
There's 1 or 2 other things. We were going through it kind of fast.
Yeah, that was the main part, is the difference.
Okay, so he's going to bring the Rambam now. Hold on. So let's go further now.
Yeah.
Ukvar heiru, and he says, and they already, made the notation. It's already been brought up, and in the parentheses he says,
And the Rebbe brings that up, by the way. He actually says that even if he says it's commanded by Noah, it's not a...
Right, that's the Rambam.
Okay.
Ukvar heiru, and they already have pointed out, and in the parentheses, Besefer, in the book, the following book, Harambam leharil Maimoin, Amud Kuf Beis. The Rambam edition, or the Rambam by this rabbi, whose last name is actually Maimon, page 102. Uva Hagois Kvoid Melachim Rambam, and in the notes, the glosses of a sefer called Kvoid Melachim, the honor of the kings, on the Rambam, Laws of Kings, Hilchos Melachim Daled, New York. Okay, it was published in New York for the first time. So over there, in that book, they say as follows. Shemikan, from here, this Mishnah that we just said, Makar L'Shitas HaRambam, this is actually the source of the Rambam's approach, the Perek Ches in chapter 8, Milchas Melachim Halacha Yud Aleph, of Laws of Kings, Halacha 11. And now we quote the Rambam. Kol HaMekabel Zayin Mitzvahs, anyone who accepts the 7 commandments. V'nizhar la'asoisan, and he's careful to do them. Harei zeh michasidu misayel, and behold, this person is from the pious of the nations. V'yishtach chelek l'lamab, and the Rambam makes this statement that he has a share in the world to come. Where does the Rambam get it from? So they're saying this is where he's getting it from. V'ushikabel oisam, and the Rambam continues, as we know, when he says, but the condition is that he has to accept them, v'yasa oisan, and do them, mipnei, because Shetziva Boen HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem has commanded to do them, B'Torah in the Torah, V'Yidi Anu, and has informed us about them, Al Yidei Moshe Rabbeinu, through our teacher Moshe, Shebnei Noach Mikoidim Nitztavu Bohen, that the Bnei Noach were previously, before the giving of the Torah, were commanded to keep them. Avol, continues the Rambam and says, however, Ima Sa'an, if this Ben Noach did these commandments, because logically they make sense. Ein ze ger toishav. This is not a ger toishav. Ve'einoi mechasidu misoelam, and he is not from the pious amongst the nations. And then he brings down the 2 different gerses over here. Ve'loi mechachameim, he's not from the wise, or elo mechachameim, or he's just from their wise. So he's from the wise amongst the nations, perhaps, but not from the pious. Atkan, up to here, is the quote of the Rambam. Second, let's go a little further. Uva Kesef Mishnah, and the Kesef Mishnah right there on the Rambam in Laws of Kings says, Shekein Kosav Misvara Denafshei. He says that the Rambam wrote this whole thing. He says he has no source. He says the Rambam, just that's what made sense to him. And he says that if they keep it because Hashem said so, then they're called Chasim Zayim, and they have a share in the world to come. And if not, then not. He says that's just what the Rambam says. But the Mishnah Eliezer that is quoted, that is his source.
That's the source.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. Okay, we still have the problem with, is it because it was given to Noach, or is it because it was given to Moshe? Fine. But otherwise, put that aside, the fact that the attitude and the belief of the Ben Noach who is accepting it and keeping it makes a huge difference in his status, that we have a source for. The Rambam says so, and this is the source.
Well, we have to assume that the Rambam had a reason, even if it hasn't been uncovered yet, for saying it has to be from Sinai.
You're saying as opposed to Noach.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
the Rebbe talks about that.
the Rebbe makes an issue out of it. Therefore,
Right.
there has to be there has to be a rationale behind it. It just is apparently it hasn't been explained yet.
Yeah, it doesn't, I mean, this doesn't
Yeah,
take
he's not going into that.
modern Torah.
Yeah, that's a very important point, which over here he's not going into. Yeah, that's the next piece. He's going to deal with it in the next piece,
Oh, good.
which is where I was planning on stopping. But let's see. I said this piece is going to lead into the next one. That's all. Okay.
Well, we can do whatever you want.
Okay, that's next paragraph. Umevur midivrei hamishnas Rabbi Eliezer. And it is explained, it comes out explained from these words that we just brought from Divrei Eliezer. The Harambam, and I'll end this Rambam. I hope I'm not making a mistake, and I hope this Mishnah Eliezer is in fact Rabbi Eliezer Atan, and it's not just a name someone gave to a sefer. Anyway, to really research that.
I would really like to know that. If
Yeah,
it's,
who's the Mishnah Eliezer? Yeah, we're going to ask you to Google that soon. Okay. So it comes out according to Mishnah Rabbi Eliezer and according to the Rambam, Sheikar Achiyuv, that the primary obligation b'mitzvahs b'nei noyach, in the fulfillment of the b'nei noyach commandments, who is Shikaimu oison, that they shall fulfill them, they have to keep them, mipnei shnitztavu mipi agvura, because they're God-given. That's an important point. V'loi mipnei shadas machras, and not because your logical mind mandates them. Not because they're just ethical things. So we say, well, wait a second. If we're supposed to keep the 7 because they're God-given, and dinim is one of the 7, and from here is also proof, like the above-mentioned opinion, that they were all, dinim is also commanded by Hashem, and it's not what they make up themselves. In other words, how can you in logic if the whole approach is that it's divine, so that I refrain from killing only because Hashem said so? Forget about the fact that it doesn't make sense to kill. Don't mix in your sense. I refrain from this, I refrain from this, I refrain from this. So also the 7th one, which is established courts, that should also fall into the same category, and logic should play no role. But according to what the whole
role, or
should play no role.
It doesn't emanate from logic.
No,
really.
We're now questioning the whole approach that we learned about.
Oh,
and he's saying,
right.
How can you say it's all a matter of manners and ethics and common sense and whatever the lawmakers make? What do you mean lawmakers make? Are they divine or are they man-made? If dinim is one of the 7, it's divine and none of it should be man-made. That's the question. V'yesh loymar l'shita zu. So if we can explain, we can answer according to this opinion. Sheikar mitzvahs dinim kloymar shalem lo yishiv dayonim. Kishitas Rambam. That the main, the fundamental part of this 7th commandment of dinim, of establishing laws, is that the nations of the world have to appoint judges, like the Rambam says. And then, after that initial thing, which is a divine commandment, now they need to make up laws according to logic. Not based on what the divine book says, but according to logic. And they have to keep those laws because they're God-given, but not on the laws themselves. Clarify.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Like we find by Jews, similar to this, when it comes to all sorts of rabbinic institutions and all sorts of safeguards that the rabbis made to protect us. Just like those logical commandments that the Jews were commanded, basically the mishpatim, those laws that are logical. Now, why does the Jew have to keep them? Only it's God commanded in the Torah, not because they make sense. They make sense. And he gave us these laws, and he gave us such a brain, and he gave us the understanding that these laws make sense. Fine. That's not why we do them, though. Re'ei divrei rasag b'sefer hasagos me'ez Reb Mevasser Halevi, New York, Tafshin Tesvav, Al Yedei Ram Zucker Amud 78, Mashkas Torah Sheleimah Chelik Tezayin Amud Shin Lamed Aleph Bashmatos. Okay, then he's giving us a few references to look up. Yeah, and I think we will stop here. And remember, the next piece now, he's going to question why the Rambam says that it's so important Moshe Rabbeinu, as opposed to the Mishnah Rabbi Eliezer says from Noach. To be continued.